Okay. Germany is considering nationalizing Gazprom and Rosneft units in the country. The business newspaper Handelsblatt reported that two Russian energy giants have a significant footprint in Europe's largest economy, with Gazprom Germania running gas storage facilities and Rosneft Deutschland accounting for a quarter of Germany's refinery business, per Handelsblatt. Berlin is also considering expropriating Gazprom assets by forcing the giant to sell its gas storage facilities across Germany, citing a government official and two other people who were briefed on the plans. The situation is serious and requires extraordinary measures. If the energy companies were nationalized, they would come under the control of German authorities, thereby loosening Russian influence on energy security in Germany and better ensuring supply continuity. Last week, Germany activated an emergency plan to deal with disruptions to its natural gas supply after Vladimir Putin demanded payment in rubles and threatened shutting off Russian gas to Europe altogether. Germany is now in the, quote, early warning phase of its energy emergency plan, with Berlin calling for all energy consumers, industry, and households to save energy and reduce consumption. If the situation worsens, the country might ration gas in the last of the three-stage plan, with industry first in line for power cuts, as outlined by their economy ministry. The move could devastate the economy and lead to job losses. Russian gas accounts for 55% of Germany's gas imports and 40% of its gas imports in the first quarter of 2022. The country has pledged to end the use of Russian gas by 2024. Amid Russia's devastating invasion of Ukraine, the United States has been increasingly getting wary about China's nuclear missiles development in the Western region. The head of the U.S. Strategic Command is scheduled to discuss China's, quote, breathtaking expansion of its strategic and nuclear arsenal with lawmakers at a closed-door hearing yesterday, Tuesday. China has made it amply clear that it would not turn its back on Russia. Admiral Charles Richard claimed that China's robust nuclear missiles development is a huge threat to Washington, as the intercontinental ballistic missile launched hypersonic glide vehicle has the capability of reaching the United States mainland. Beijing tested the weapon last July. Beijing's first test of the missile system is a technological achievement with serious implications for strategic stability. Admiral Charles Richard wrote in a prepared testimony, it was, quote, the greatest distance and longest flight time of any land attack weapon system of any nation to date. At the time of testing, the hypersonic vehicle flew 25,000 miles for more than 100 minutes, Richard wrote in the testimony. He said that China and Russia can unilaterally escalate a conflict to any level of violence in any domain worldwide with any instrument of national power at any time. The United States Armed Forces no longer have the luxury of assuming the risk is always low, particularly during a crisis. It is believed that nearly 120 missile silos are placed in each field in Beijing's weapon active area. As China continues to build its hypersonic and directed energy weapons technology, the U.S. sees the action as Beijing's way of preparing itself for any possible threat from the West. The United States tested a hypersonic missile in mid-March, but did not make the news of its mission public, according to an unnamed defense official, who is said to be close to the matter. Washington decided to remain silent about the hypersonic missile testing over escalating tensions with Russia. The test also coincided with Joe Biden's travel to Europe, where he discussed the Ukraine crisis. The hypersonic air-breathing weapon concept, which is also called a HAWC, HAWC, was launched from a B-52 bomber off the West Coast. Its range was above 65,000 feet with a travel distance of more than 300 miles. The missile test is also the country's first successful test of the Lockheed Martin version of the system. Go buy your stocks now. Just kidding. This isn't investment advice. I don't want to get in trouble. Russia also recently claimed to have used its own hypersonic missile during its invasion of Ukraine, which began in February. In the 6 weeks since Russia invaded Ukraine, the conflict has not only sent energy prices soaring, but has disrupted food production, pushing costs upwards and stoking fears of global food shortages. The United Nations has warned of surging food insecurity in countries that depend on wheat from Ukraine, a critical and major breadbasket. Many of them were already teetering on the edge of hunger before the crisis. As these effects of conflict ripple across the globe, the world is seeing how energy and food are crucially linked to one another. Just a couple examples. Farmers everywhere are scrambling to buy fertilizer, which has become exorbitantly expensive and scarce as prices for natural gas make it have or I guess have made it shoot up. And vegetable growers in the UK say that energy prices are so high they can't afford to heat their greenhouses, meaning less fresh produce in the coming months. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is considering expanding the use of ethanol made from corn in an attempt to lower fuel prices, but at the risk of raising food prices. Food and energy markets are going through the roof at the moment, said Tim Benton, who is the director of Environment and Society program at Chatham House in the UK. The key question for those of us who are interested in sustainability is whether nature will be sacrificed in order to boost food production or whether the climate will be sacrificed in order to produce energy production. Or boost energy production. This is an interesting article. It's incredibly slanted and leans very much in favor of climate, but I wanted to share it with you guys because I think it's important. He went on to say, as the Russia Ukraine can't talk. I shouldn't have interrupted myself. As the Russia Ukraine conflict draws the relationship between energy and agriculture into sharp relief, it also reframes a long standing and related question over biofuels. Should the world's finite agriculture land be used to grow fuel rather than food, especially when the planet faces the intertwined crisis of growing hunger and climate change? There is less land than there is demand for the goods that come from the land. This is a direct quote from Benton. Today, the grain consumed by the United States and Europe to produce biofuels is twice what Ukraine exports in a year. Some researchers say there's not enough cropland to support the food needs of a growing global population and grow biofuels without gobbling up the land that should be left as forest or native vegetation, enabling it to store more carbon. Every climate strategy requires that we stop expanding agricultural land. This is from a senior research scholar at the Princeton School of Public and International Affairs. But the world is expanding agricultural land at a record rate. In the European Union, roughly 10% of cropland is already used for biofuels. But the EU's plan to restore more carbon and biodiversity in Europe, a plan known as Fit for 55, which is currently being debated, depends on an expansion of biofuels and the cropland to grow them. We're relying on Europe to reduce their demand for land, yet they're going to increase their demand for land. At least for now, there are no immediate shortages because of sufficient grain stores. The critical issue is how to use and distribute what exists in ways that ensure food security. There are considerable amounts of grain we can use for other purposes than feeding animals or feeding cars. This is Pierre-Marie Albert, who is a senior research fellow with the European Agriculture Initiative. He said the key question is whether policymakers want to address that question. They haven't seemed willing to do so. So I thought that this was a really good article, just to kind of look at what we're doing from a biofuel production versus food production. Will we let ourselves starve or will we let our cars starve? It's a great question. You still need both. Oklahoma lawmakers on Tuesday passed a bill that would make it illegal to perform an abortion in the state except in medical emergencies, penalizing those who do with up to $100,000 in fines and 10 years in prison. An abortion ban in Oklahoma would widen a swath of the country where there is little to no legal abortion access. The state has become a prime destination for Texas women seeking abortions since Texas in September banned abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. These harmful bills, this is a quote, these harmful bills are an alarming reminder that the days of access to safe and legal abortion may be numbered, and we must continue to fight to guarantee all people have access to the essential health care they need, including abortion. That is a quote from the director of American Civil Liberties Union of Oklahoma. Her name is Tamaya Cox Tour. The U.S. Supreme Court is due to rule by the end of June in a case involving a Republican backed Mississippi law that gives a conservative majority a chance to undermine or even repeal Roe v. Wade, ruling that legalized abortion nationwide. During arguments in the case, the conservative justices signaled a willingness to dramatically curtail abortion rights in America. I am not giving my opinion on this subject. Most of you already know what it is, but something to think about. Okay, I need to hustle. Peru, the world's number 2 copper producer, will target excess profits that mining firms have gained from soaring global metals prices for extra taxation, the country's economy minister told Reuters. While President Pedro Castillo came to power last July, pledging to increase taxes on the powerful mining sector, the current plan is far less ambitious than the initial promises of sharp tax hikes that meet fierce resistance from the industry and a divided Congress. Copper prices are currently trading at near record levels, around $10,000 a ton, in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine. Peru faces risk from any prolongation of the war in Ukraine, domestic prices having risen at their fastest pace in a quarter of a century in March. We are net importers of oil and corn, which form the chain of inputs that most affect the family basket. Adding that, government was evaluating doubling the budget for social programs to mitigate inflation for the most vulnerable. I found this to be interesting because that line, doubling the budget for social programs to mitigate inflation for the most vulnerable, it would seem that this war in Ukraine, coupled with what we're coming off of in COVID, is a direct pipeline to creating government dependency, where the problems have been created by governments, and so they're presenting their solution for you to be dependent on what they provide for you, which means that hardworking individuals who have maintained and worked in the system will then be supporting a larger number of individuals. Just wanted to point that out. Officials with Iran's foreign ministry are giving indications that the Vienna negotiations are not just stalled, but are effectively over. They say they are prepared to return to Vienna to sign the final deal, but not if it's just for more negotiations. All the reports of things being close seem to be accurate, with Iran interpreting things as finished and just waiting for the U.S. to settle any internal issues on accepting the final pact. The big question remains the removal of Iran's Revolutionary Guards from the U.S. terror blacklist, something that is politically difficult for the United States. Iran is also keen to get a U.S. assurance that the next president won't unilaterally withdraw from the deal, but that may not be achievable. State Department officials offered an unusually upbeat assessment, saying they believe differences can still be overcome. This is a stark difference to their usual predictions that the deal will fall apart. It's not clear if they picture more negotiations either, or if they, who also believe the deal is near, might resolve the last little bit on their own. Imagine our government acting unilaterally to make decisions like this. Shocker. This is an interesting one. So this is making headlines right now, but not for the reason you think it is. I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys about it. So Tennessee lawmakers this week will vote on a bill seeking to establish common law marriages in the state between one man and one woman. Some worry the bill, which does not set an explicit age limit, would effectively legalize all age marriages, while others have said they're concerned the bill would undermine the landmark Supreme Court ruling which legalized same sex marriage. The bill's sponsor, Tom Leatherwood, has argued that the bill would merely create a new marriage option for Tennessee residents. His quote is, "All this bill does is give an alternative form of marriage for those pastors and other individuals who have a conscientious objection to the current pathway to marriage in our law." But Leatherwood did concede the bill does not set a specific age requirement for marriage. Under current Tennessee law, a person as young as 17 years old may be married with parental consent. Nearly 300,000 children were married in the United States between 2000 and 2018, according to the UN's UNICEF, which defines a child marriage as any marriage where at least one party is under 18 years old. 300,000. Holy shit. In the absence of federal law setting a minimum age for marriage, several states have outlawed child marriage, but the practice still is technically legal in 44 states, including Tennessee. Leatherwood's bill would also shield local officials like county clerks from legal action stemming from their decision to either issue or deny a marriage license. I thought this was interesting. It absolves the state from any recourse if they deny you your right to get married. The bill will be heard in the State House Civil Justice Committee today. That is your Wednesday edition of Everything Yesterday This Morning. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the morning. Mwah.